How do I mute myself?
Okay. It's up in the top. Like if you hover your mouse over your face, it should be up on the top, a little microphone. You got it. So to prepare for the exam, the decision that I made, it is open book, and it is all multiple choice. But I want to give you some orientation to the questions. So it's going to be, I think, probably around 70-ish questions. And tonight we're going to go over about 28 of those. So it's not going to be comprehensive. As in, like, it's not everything. The study guide is very vague, but intentionally so because it's open book. But hopefully this will at least give you some focus for the materials that we're a little bit light on. Just we didn't have phone calls for them. So any questions before we begin? Nope. Okay. So just to give you a reference where we're starting, we're going to go through CAWA model. We're going to go through illness management and recovery, early intervention, and after school programs. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Okay. So what I've done is kind of prepare, set it up like a test. And all right, so the first one we are going to talk about is the CAWA model. And our first question is, discrete circumstances that are considered to impede one's water or life flow. They are life circumstances perceived by the client to be problematic or difficult to remove. An example would be maybe a diagnosis. Is this water, rocks, driftwood, or the river walls and bottom? You can answer in the chat. You could answer verbally. Carly says rocks. Rocks. Fab's getting wild. Just guessing. Hey, Liz. Rocks. Okay, yep. That's correct. Is rocks. Correct answer. All right. The second question is, the client's environment in the context of being inseparable from all of the other river structures. These are micro or macro. Is it water, rocks, driftwood, or the river walls and bottom? Things that are inseparable. Lori's saying river walls and bottom. See, everybody is mentally scrambling to figure out or remember the CAWA model, but we'll give it. Lori, thank you for being bold. Fab, thank you too. River walls and bottom is correct. Correct, Carly. Good job. Number 3, the client's personal attributes and resources that can positively or negatively affect the subject's circumstances and life flow. They are transient in nature and focus on feelings. For example, motivation. Is this the water, the rocks, the driftwood, or the river wall at the bottom? All right. Lori and Carly say driftwood, and they are correct. Driftwood it is. And finally, this is the subject, life energy or life flow. Water, rocks, driftwood, or river walls? Water. Ooh, Carly came in first. Good. Water. That's absolutely correct. It's the water. So we're going to move on and talk a little bit about illness management and recovery program. So you will see, just to give you a heads up, you will see these again. So people recover in their own way. They plan for recovery, and this refers to their personal goals and steps to achieve those goals. Is this part of recovery strategies, social supports, the stress vulnerability model, facts about mental health, or medication use? Their plan for recovery, personal goals for recovery. Yep, recovery strategies it is. Good job, recovery strategies. The next question. Mental illness is common. Symptoms vary and can be managed, and mental illness is no one's fault. Are these recovery strategies, social support, stress vulnerability model, facts about mental health, or medication use? Yep. Facts about mental health. Great job. So number 7 refers biology and stress affect symptoms of mental illness. Biology and stress affect symptoms of mental illness. Recovery strategies, social supports, stress vulnerability model, facts about mental health, or medication use. Lori says stress vulnerability. Stress vulnerability. Stress. Yes, you are correct. Stress vulnerability model. Excellent. Number 8, relationships are positive, rewarding, helpful, and can reduce stress and relapse. Social supports, recovery strategies, stress vulnerability, facts about mental health or medication. Yep. Social supports. Good job. Number 9, medications can reduce symptoms and fit into daily routine. It is important to be aware of side effects. Yep. Liz, Lori, Carly, medication use. Michelle, medication use. Fab. And the answer is medication use. Good job. Number 10, explore reasons for substance use along with the pros and cons of use. Does this refer to coping with stress, drug and alcohol use, reducing relapse, coping with problems and symptoms, or getting needs met? If you explore the reasons for substance use along with the pros and the cons of use. Liz and Carly say it's the drug and alcohol use, and they would be correct. During this, you identify triggers and early warning signs along with creating a plan. Does this refer to coping with stress, drug and alcohol use, reducing relapse, coping with problems and symptoms, or getting needs met? Majority says reducing relapse, and you are correct. Next is being aware of life stressors and strategies in managing them so that you can manage them. Coping with stress, drug and alcohol use, reducing relapse, coping with problems and symptoms, getting needs met. So you're right with coping, and you'll see why there's a different answer when you see the next question. But the correct answer for this one is coping with stress. The next question says, step-by-step method to solve problems, achieve goals, and recognize patterns. Right. Coping with problems and symptoms is correct. I think if you saw these two, you would be able to tease out the difference between, because this one's focusing on stress and these are focusing on problems. And the last in this section, advocate for client rights and explore healthcare options. It says coping with stress, drug and alcohol use, reducing relapse, coping with problems and symptoms, or getting needs met. Majority says getting needs met, and you are correct. Getting needs met. The next section refers to early intervention with a special focus on sensory processing. All right, so here is a small case study. In a store, the parent appears oblivious that the child is acting out and throwing items. They slowly begin to realize the child is yelling and crying and ask them, what's wrong? This parent likely has passive strategies with high threshold, active strategies with a high threshold, passive with low threshold, or active with low threshold. Liz and Lori are going with A, and they and Carly too. You all would be correct. Passive strategies and a high threshold. Remember, high threshold, big cup. In the next situation, during nap times, this child easily is awoken easily. When this happens, the child instantly begins to cry and scream out, and remaining in the crib. This child has passive with high threshold, active with high threshold, passive with low, or active with low. So this is a little tricky, and you'll see why, I think, in the next one. But the answer is actually C. And the reason why is that there's obviously that low threshold, the tiny cup, but they're staying in the crib. They're not doing anything to get out. That's why C is the best answer. So number 17, mom is always following her appointment book and schedules the child into daily activities, keeping tight to her routine and being cautious with the child. Is this passive high, active high, passive low, or active low? Right. Good. Active low. This child loves to roughhouse and will continuously run his car into the wall and run into the opposite wall over and over and over. This child is passive high, passive low, or active low. Majority says B, and majority is correct. B, active with high thresholds. These next questions are in reference to consumer-operated services. Services offered within the consumer-operated model include medications, therapy, case management, or peer support. Majority says peer support. Majority would be correct. Next, the length of service within a consumer-operated model is short-term, as long as needed, mandatory, or over when outcomes are achieved. Majority says B. Majority is correct, as long as needed. All right, here's assessments commonly used with a consumer-operated model include the CELS, ACLS, fidelity measures, or surveys. This is a little tricky one. It would require going back to the model, but it's actually fidelity measures. Targeted outcomes of a consumer-operated model include all of the following except symptom relief, quality of life, empowerment, and social supports. So majority says A, and majority is correct. Symptom relief. Okay, the next and final area addresses children's mental health and after-school programs. And we're going to be looking at the different tiers of intervention. So tier 1, 2, and 3. So every child within the school system receives DARE classes, which the OT helps to facilitate along with a police officer. Classes are delivered as part of the curriculum to warn about the dangers of drug and alcohol use and peer pressure. This is an example of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Majority says A. Majority is correct. This is a tier 1 intervention. A child is withdrawn and sullen. They lack motivation to participate in school and leisure activities. The OT decides to implement a leisure interest checklist to determine the occupations of importance for the child. This is an example of 1, 2, or 3. So the answer is actually C, Tier 3. As a reminder, Tier 3 interventions are one-to-one intervention. So we're working with one child in a Tier 3 intervention, which should help you with this next question. A group of children have been referred to occupational therapy due to frequent altercations with their peers resulting in fights and arguments. The OT develops and implements a program to encourage sharing, emotional regulation, and communication skills. This is an example of Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3 intervention. Yep, so majority says B. Majority is correct. It's a Tier 2 because it's a group. So just as a reminder, Tier 1 is the entire school. It's curriculum-based. Tier 2 is small groups. And Tier 3 is one-to-one. So that was very quick, but that's it. That was 28 questions. So any questions, comments, concerns? No? That's pretty much what you'll be able to expect. Like I said, I focused more on questions that would be from the end of the semester, just because we haven't had an opportunity to have those phone calls. But anything from the beginning of the semester on is fair game. So they'll be very similar. So the study guide I'm going to send when I send the link for the video. So that hasn't been sent out yet. I didn't want to do it until I had created the test. No. So there's around 70 questions, 70, 75 questions. There's not a call next week because as a class, it was decided that we would have your test is going to be next weekend. I typically, for the test, I typically give 90 seconds per. Oh, it's my cat. I give 90 seconds per question typically. So I haven't finished setting it up yet, but I would imagine I can't add right now. So it will almost be the full 2 hours. I'll probably just give you the full 2 hours to take the test.
Sarah, when did you say it opens and closes?
So
is that an announcement? I couldn't find it.
No, it was in one of the online or the calls that we had.
Oh, okay.
It's going to open on Friday and then close on Sunday evening. So you'll have a full 48 hours to complete it.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? All right, then. Well, if there's no more questions, that's all I have for tonight. I'm about halfway through grading the protocols, so I imagine they'll be out soon. But everything else is going good on this end. Yeah. So, and that is it. Have a wonderful evening.